So just to introduce myself, my name is Jerry, I'm CEO of Datum, and I want to talk about how to build Web3 apps and actually to share with you some best practices they have learned, because we basically create a developer tooling for Web3. And so it's a simple SDK, it's basically for Web2 developers, so we have actually over 170,000 of them right now. Yeah, a lot of small projects, a lot of starting projects. We also have bigger ones like Binance and others using us. So we have quite a lot of experience about the good things and also fuck-ups. So very briefly, when we are talking about the free app, a lot of people are asking, like, okay, so what it is, right? So one thing is, what you should know is there's two important things. One is we are using blockchain, which basically is database. All right, there's a lot of mystery around what it is, but actually it's just database. You can read, you can write, you can't update, you can't delete, so you can't change the history. Here's the magic, that's it. And they have also smart contracts, which is pretty much procedures in normal databases. Just again, you can change it, you can delete it. Done, right? So how you know everything? You know more than 99% of people in that space. The more important thing is, when you start building something, like what is the best experience you can get, right? What is to avoid all the mistakes, because I can tell you, we are seeing about 90-95% projects fail, because they either are trying to apply whatever they are doing today, same way on the technology. It's pretty much like, trying to, if you're riding a horse and then you go to some gas pump and just try to pump gas into him and he'll probably die. And that's kind of what's happening very often. I'm from banking, right? So I've seen this multiple times. And then they say, okay, this technology sucks. So one thing is, there is this issue with people because you don't have enough developers in Web3 space. And so if you want to build something as a company, as a bank, as a as a retailer, as whatever it is, you have to hire someone who knows how to do things, right? But that's not actually completely true, because if you think about how we as a technical guys work normally, which is we are not experts in everything, yet we are able to deliver. So why is that? Well, because we don't go and use the technology as an expert. We just use tools which helps you to build things, right? So in developer space, we are using something we call SDK, we are using APIs, we are using frameworks, right? We are using things which helps us. Surprisingly, in Web3 space, that's not the case. In Web3 space, most people, if not all of them basically right now, are going directly to the magical blockchain, right? So they have to understand every single detail how it works. And the secret is they don't understand it mostly. So, So basically what we usually suggest is, when you have a bigger company and you have your team of IT people, just take them and give them proper tooling. Give them something like framework, give them something like SDK so they can actually deliver, or give them APIs, whatever it is, so they can actually build something, instead of bringing some external people which they don't know the company, they don't understand what the company is about, they don't understand, they don't have the overall understanding like why they're doing it, and so whatever they deliver usually sucks. Even if technically it's okay, it sucks anyway. So so the experience we have is just really try to use your existing team. So we basically, as a solution for this issue, we really kind of recommend to use something like framework. It's pretty standard in Web2. In Web2 space, all the developers have a set of frameworks they are using, nothing new. If you think about blockchain as a database, which it is, then in most cases, at least for past 15 years, we are trying to abstract from database layer, right? We are trying to abstract, so you don't hard code for specific database anymore if you do something a little bit more serious. Because then you create what? You create vendor lock. You don't want vendor lock unless, you are a vendor. So basically, you should be looking for some abstraction. And again, most of SDKs are actually abstract, or frameworks are actually abstracting you from the final technology, right? I mean, Bootstrap is abstracting you from buying all the screens in the world and trying to fit everything in. and Hibernate as a Java framework is helping you to abstract it from the database. So something like that, this is what you should be thinking about when you are going to build something. Because you might find out you actually decided, for example, for the wrong blockchain. Because it's not powerful enough, it's not fast enough, it becomes expensive, or you want to be cross-chain, or you want to support more chains at once for different reasons. So this is always important to think about the vendor lock. You don't want that. I think it's not 2003 anymore, so we don't do that. The next thing, which is important, is there are few specifics you should be aware of. One is that basically, as I said, most developers today, they are going directly to the blockchain, to the database, right? You run or you get access somewhere. It's called RPC, which is basically you have a node, which is basically the instance of database you are connecting to, and you are doing RPC calls, which is basically REST API something, right? And you get data. Well, the issue is the structure of data is different. Maybe you heard okay, so we have Ethereum, we have Solana, we have other chains, and those chains are compatible because they're compatible. Well, they are not exactly. If you try to actually work a little bit more, we'll find some differences, which will most likely kill your business a little bit later. One of them is, for example, something we in Web3 space call finality. Basically, when a lot of companies, what they are doing is they are analyzing data. Like, for example, exchanges. They want to know if you will send Ether to that exchange, they want to see that actually you did it, right? So what happens is they are scanning something we call tip of the chain, basically the new data, and searching if there is a new transaction for your wallet. And if there is a new transaction, then great, Jerry has new 1 Ethereum, I wish, I don't, maybe next year. The issue with that is that we all heard that blockchain, actually, you can't change blockchain, right? Well, not exactly. For example, Ethereum has this capacity to change the data in the past few minutes. Not many people know that, actually, but it's true. So you can see most of the apps are actually wrong because they are doing this tip of the chain scanning, and then the data is actually adjusted, like, a minute later. They don't know because they don't check, and then they have negative balances or nonsense, basically, right? Most of the apps, by the way, have the same issue. And there is different logic how it works. So for example, in Ethereum, you should be aware that if you do this, you should check in 1 minute and 2 minutes again. I can guarantee you, out of those 15,000 developers which exist, maybe 100 knows that. Now you guys. So you have to be very careful. Also, if you have Ethereum, for example, and you upgrade, it can change as well. So you still have to be kind of, careful what's happening with upgrades. If you're using some provider to get access, he doesn't care. It's your business, not theirs. And so on and so forth. So that's where things like SDKs or frameworks actually helps you again, right? Because they abstract you from all that crap. They just give you the power of getting right data, and you don't have to do all that stuff behind that. Then you have to be also careful that not all chains have the same feature set. Like you can't mint NFT, for example, with Bitcoin. I think still, unless something changed. You can't do that. And also the way how it works is a bit different. In some cases, minting NFT is straightforward. In some cases, it's more difficult. And in some cases, there is a different logic in every chain. And if you are actually building something, you should know that. And again, if you want to move your app, move your code to some different chain, that's going to be wasted. Because you just did something which is specific for that one chain. And then it's also the way how, and this is the important part, how you insert data, which basically means sending transaction in Web3 language, right? So you basically send a transaction, you have to sign it, And again, the way how it works in different chains is very, very different. Some of them can do a little bit queuing, some of them you have to queue by yourself, you have to actually give, that's a funny story by the way. We have seen a couple of customers, they fucked up badly. They were doing a lot of transactions, and in some cases, in some chains, you have to actually say, this is transaction number 1, this is transaction number 2, this is transaction number 3. Now, if transaction number 2 fails, none of the rest transaction will go through. But the thing is, you don't know, right? So it takes some time, and it's actually very difficult. And it's fine if you do three transactions, that's fine. But what if you do 1,000 per minute? It's a bit different story. You have to be very careful with that as well. You actually have to have some sort of management around it, so you can actually work this out. So that's something you should be aware as well, and where it goes very badly. Now, again, with this, the suggestion we have in general is just again use something which will unify your access and your implementation. So whether it's API, whether it's SDK, all that works. Just go direct. Don't go directly, because it's always great to see hello world in Google. Like you can find those examples and you can do something and it will work. And then when you start building something more serious, you will it's going to be very painful and expensive actually. Like most projects, by the way, they actually redo things 2 or 3 times, so you have to start over. So 5 months gone, 10 people work wasted, and again, right? So that might happen. Of course, I already talked about it. We chose the wrong blockchain. That's happening a lot, because in most cases you just don't know what actually your app is going to be like, because it's everything new. So a lot of people, the thing is, they usually solve it the way that they hire an expert. That expert is expert in one chain, so guess what he will tell you to use, right? He will tell you to use that one chain, not something else. And so what we are also seeing is, and I mentioned that with those 5 iterations of failures, is basically a lot of people are building from scratch, like everything from scratch, which is great if you're if you're on your own time, if you have passion and you don't care about money and all that. That's great, and good for you. But when you're building something serious, that's not usually what happens. And then you have to build all those features, right? I mean, you might think, okay, so I'm going to mint NFT, so I'll just do one feature to mint NFT. That's not it. I mean, you have to do all the stuff around that. It's not just simple feature like that. You have to build a lot of things. You have to think about a lot of things to make it right. And so the recommendation we have is basically to use pre-built features, which is battle tested. You have multiple tools online, or GitHub. One of the presenters over there. On GitHub you can find a lot of SDKs, a lot of things which can help you out. I highly recommend to use them, because they will be most likely much better than whatever you will do, unless maybe not. And then the last and the biggest issue we are seeing mostly is that everyone is satisfied with their Web3 app as long as it is being used. The biggest secret of Web3 space is everyone is doing great unless actually it's being used really, because then you hit all the issues with the scaling, right? Because you hit issues like, well, that chain cannot do more than 15 transactions per second. So what if you have 10,000 users and they all want to transact? Then one transaction will cost you not $1, but maybe $10,000, right? So because the bidding will kick in. And so we usually recommend to use features something like off-chain, for example, so you cache locally a lot of things and then you just transact once a while. Bearing all this in mind is we have built, originally it's API based, but on top of this APIs we have built SDK, which is basically JavaScript SDK. You can plug in the same way as you're using other SDKs, and you can just build your Web3 app. Pretty easy, a few lines of code. Very nice one. It's on the GitHub, so if you search, or you can go to Datum.io, it will direct you to GitHub. You can download, it's open source, so you can enjoy it. Thank you guys, thank you very much.